morning. Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this second day of December 2025. And it's time for us to have a conversation about the lessons that we are learning from the by-elections of 2025 and also what we need to do to fix our electoral system further, because we've had so many laws, so many regulations put in place, but you still hear the complaints that the opposition has brought on board, saying there was election rigging, there was manipulation of the voters, manipulation of the votes. Where are we? And in studio I have Franklin Mukwanja, who is the Executive Director at the Center of Multi-Party Democracy. Good morning. Good morning. Irene Soila is a Program Officer at the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Good morning. Good morning. You were monitoring the election. From where?
Of course, we had so many monitors across.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the by-elections?
Yes.
Yes. Across various counties where we had the by-elections happening.
Okay, we'll talk about that. And Peter Alingo is a Democracy, Governance and Elections Specialist. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see you again. I think the last time I see you is many years ago.
Yeah.
But karibu sana.
Asante.
And you're still expecting Mheshimiwa Mohamed Ado, who is already in studio, is the Member of Parliament for Wajir South, as you talk about what just happened. Now, in the morning, you'll find that the main stories, the Daily Nation is talking of when public schools leave the poor behind. Then the Standard is talking about hit by Russia's war. Some of the conversations that have been kickstarted, again on the Daily Nation, Gachagua rattles his opposition allies with Nairobi zoning plan, and then you find that Ruto saying, I will deal with goons. So let me begin with you, Irene Soila, what you are able to observe as yourself, but also as an organization from these elections, and how it compares to the feedback you're hearing from the political class.
I think I would love to do justice to the discussion by coming from a place of the campaign period to where we found ourselves on the D-Day of the by-elections. And to start by saying that we experienced the worst, I think, campaign period, considering the violence that were meted on Kenyans and the threats and the intimidations that were being meted on Kenyans during the campaign period. So much that we didn't expect to see this for or a by-elections. I mean, a by-elections is always something that does not have to be a do or die, like what we saw. And probably we are coming from a place of what happened in Kiambaa, if you remember the Kiambaa by-elections, where there was a lot of intimidations as well. But now this one became more intense, you know. And we're also coming from a background of just having the Gen Z uprising, where we lost so many lives, in these by-elections, from any other, we saw the loss of lives in various parts of the country, where the political class were all over trying to mobilize votes and intimidate whoever who was trying to go against their will, for the kind of, or the aspirants that they had for themselves. And so therefore, we come to the elections, or the by-elections day, from a place of volatile campaigns to a day where we're coming to now take the elections. And you realize that that campaign period really affected the D-Day of the by-election. So much that even the turnout was very low. I think I can only account for Chwele, where we had, I think, 50% turnout. The rest of the areas, way up to 2 p.m. is when we could see people coming in to vote. And it became very difficult because the young people shunned these by-elections completely, which is a great concern, considering that we just had a serious Gen Z uprising, and there was a call for draining the swamp. So basically, we are saying we have experienced a bad situation, that we are yet to understand what it means towards the 2027 elections, and whether we will in any way be affording to ourselves a free, fair process.
All right.
So yeah, it's quite challenging. Okay. And we hope that before the 2027 elections, we would have gotten back to our senses that even as we gear towards a very competitive process, it should not cost lives.
Okay.
If we even as we prepare for very competitive process, Kenyans should not be threatened to come out and exercise their duty to vote for their preferred candidates.
All right.
So it's a crazy situation that we as Kenyans must sit down and process and see what's best for us.
Okay. All right. We'll get to more details about some of the issues that you've raised. Mohamed Ado, good morning. Member of Parliament for Wajir South, and we're having a conversation about the recent elections. Please, as you settle down, let's hear from Franklin. In terms of your observation, she has talked about the pre-election period, the election day, and briefly about the days after. What was your observation from CMD?
Yep, I want to agree with Irene that the issue of violence during campaigns on the election day is a major concern. But what concerns us more is the complacence or the looking aside or the very clever way of condoning some of these actions by the security apparatus. Some, you'll agree with me that the security apparatus, the National Police Service in particular, is a very key electoral management body. And we have come a long way in enhancing their capacity and understanding of the role of police officers in an election process. And therefore, looking at the clawbacks that we're having around this and the way these issues are being handled is a key concern. On the polling day, there are two significant things that we also noticed challenges around. The issue of assisted voting, and secondly, the issue of the secrecy of the ballot. There seems to be laxity in enforcement in those two areas that IEBC and stakeholders need to adequately review and see are there structured ways to enhance that and not just leaving it to the improvisation of the voters. But also...
Sorry, what are the issues with assisted voting and secrecy of the ballot?
You know, it's quite clear that there is a process that you need to follow for assisted voting. But from the observers' reports that we have, there was no meticulous way of doing it. And it's becoming increasingly an area that can be misused and misapplied. And then secondly, IEBC itself actually issued a statement about the secrecy of the ballot. And just whether you cannot deny people carrying their gadgets wherever they want to, but how do we ensure that that is managed in a structured way and not left to the improvisation of the voter, not on how not to do it. So there's a challenge in there that we need to address.
There's something you're not saying there. Is it that people are capturing the ballot, or when was secrecy breached?
It is both. One is the bad behavior by the voters themselves. And whether there is some level of restrictions in that polling room to ensure that that is not happening. All right? But then the biggest challenge around there is the assisted voting and the process with which that has to happen, and whether the different actors in that polling room actually are executing their roles. And that is an area, a grey area that is it has not been an issue particularly previously, but we saw that there is laxity in terms of enforcement on the part of election officials in the polling room in that regard. And that could be slightly attributed to also the presence in some polling stations of unauthorized, it's not unauthorized access, it's actually accessed by unauthorized individuals, you know, in and outside of the polling stations and the polling environment. And that also speaks to the enforcement, particularly, of security officers and doing their job without any interference. Finally, I think for both even the losers and the winners, it is quite clear that the case for electoral justice is still quite out there, that we need to continuously pursue that. Because these issues that we're mentioning, while not to the extent that may have interfered with the outcome of the results, they actually extrapolated. You can see that in a general election, such challenges can cause a lot of problems to the integrity and the credibility of the process.
All right, we're still establishing the conversation. Peter, after many years of witnessing, observing elections, training on them, what have we learned from these by-elections?
Thank you, Sam. Let me just clarify this, that I also sit here wearing the hat of ELOG as well, the Election Observation Group, right? And I think I want to begin this conversation by putting it squarely on the table, that what we are seeing are part of the challenges that we continuously witness when around our elections are what one would describe as systemic perennial challenges and weaknesses that continue to happen. And the bigger question, as we've started the conversation, is why do we continue having these challenges? And I think the conversation has to take place in the context of, one, the background of these by-elections and the circumstances. Because you have to look at it holistically. It's not just about the E-Day, but it's about the processes leading to the E-Day and the processes immediately after, including the pursuit for electoral justice that my colleague has talked about. So if you look at the circumstances and the background of these by-elections, I think you are seeing three things. One is the nature, the evolving nature of the politics that we are having in the country, which is increasingly becoming violence by the day. You know, it's no longer a competition that we know or should know, but in an environment where we are increasingly seeing political posturing that is creating an environment for violence. You know, the competition is no longer the sober competition that we'd like to see. That is one. Number two is that we are seeing this by-election in the context of a newly, created electoral commission that is yet to learn, some of these things in terms of proper management and conduct of the elections. I think if you look at the commission itself, there is only one commissioner, perhaps, who you can argue has had experience with political electoral processes, that is Commissioner Anne Nderitu, who is coming from a political party's background. Beyond that, the rest are newly people who are coming in as new faces to this and are yet to learn. And so this was just the first encounter with the elections, our Kenyan elections, that is always increasingly becoming very bruising to actors, and requires a very effective and assertive manager. And that is what we are yet to see, that the IEBC coming to terms. And this was baptism with fire for them. They are yet to come to terms with the actual characteristics of our elections and learn how to manage and properly assert their authority over it. And the next thing is about the people that we are talking about. And the people can be categorized into a number of segments. The Gen Zs are one of them, right? The political actors is another, and then the general behavior of the Kenyan voter, which Franklin has described very well, is horrible. We are yet to mature, we are yet to sober. But we sometimes look at this and see a deliberate kind of behavior, people just behaving badly, politically.
Right.
You know, and that is what we see in the by-elections when Franklin was talking about violations of the secrecy of the ballot, you know. And so for me, out of these by-elections, there are three things that I have seen. Okay. One, the systemic perennial challenges and weaknesses that although they did not in overall sense undermine the credibility of the outcome, they speak to so many things that we need to do. That is one thing. Number two, the bad behavior of our political actors on the one hand and voters on the other, right? Where we see violence instead of sober, mature politics that is competitive, that is issue-based, and that delivers for the people who are voting. On the other hand, then on the part of the voters, where we see apathy, the Gen Z, for example, you know, shunning these by-elections, when in fact we were expecting them to begin to stamp their issues across the democratic governance platform in terms of what they want. Then this is how to make their voice become clear by asserting that voice through the ballot. They failed to do so. So yet I think this is also something that needs to be investigated in terms of research to establish what the reasons are why there is an agitation for the Gen Z's voice to be on the table on the one hand. But when there is an opportunity for that voice to be felt through a democratic means, then they sit back. You know, that is a bigger question. And number three is the question of management, the IEBC, right? We have to remember that this is not the first time we are having by-elections. And normally in by-elections, they are characterized by low voter turnout. But this one was lower, you know, below 50% threshold. So you ask yourself, what is the issue here? Is it failure, lapses on the part of the management body that is not exciting Kenyan citizens enough to be able to tell them that, look, this is about your sovereign power, because that is it. It's about the sovereignty of the people, people being able to speak through the ballot to make their choices clear and to be able to be part of the political governance by selecting or electing the leadership that they want. And if they don't do so, then they are subverting their own sovereignty.
All right. We will get into the details, but Mheshimiwa Ado, there was a time, I think it was in August 2022, where there was serious violence in one of your constituencies in Wajir, that was Eldas. And I think it caused the election to be suspended, if I'm not mistaken. What have you observed with all the claims of violence and the images that we've seen in Malava, a bit of Mbere and other parts like Narok Town ward? What must we learn from this?
Well, we learn a lot from that, and honestly, it stems from the fact that we have reduced or we've made our electoral processes and elections into a do-or-die affair. That must be said and underlined very clearly. There's a lot of bickering ahead of the elections and a lot of emotional build-up, mostly by politicians, I must say. I don't blame the electorate, I don't blame the voters, I don't blame the Kenyan masses, because they are conditioned to that ahead of the elections. The us versus them narrative, which runs very deep in this country and in our politics. And the other problem also stems from the fact that we have life and politics are so intertwined in Kenya that anything regarding politics is regarded, you know, with a lot more seriousness than any other issue, maybe even the economical issues, social issues. And we saw a lot of conditioning and people being emotionally whipped ahead of the elections, you know, politicians making, you know, all these swearing, you know, to make whoever one term and all that, and the elections being the by-elections being a litmus test for what is to come in 2027, which is just a political narrative anyway. So it was a do-or-die affair to the extent you could see big political figures roughing up, civilians outside the polling stations. We saw those videos. We saw those pictures of people who we thought, could lead Kenya, and are ready to govern the country, reducing themselves to goons, outside. People being chased away from the polling stations just because they're wearing a certain color associated. I mean, it could be a wardrobe malfunction for that day. Somebody just picking a jacket, in the heat of the moment and finding themselves at the polling station. They shouldn't have been victimized for that. All stems from our political culture.
Right.
And a lot needs to be done if we are to move forward as the democracy we are, and if we are to move and progress forward from this violent election. And again, can't we hold elections where there are no disputes?
Yeah.
Every election season is punctuated with very long and litigious court processes. People challenging every result in court, post-election unrest, all that. I blame the political class.
Okay.
I blame the political class.
Right. Well, now it's time for a short break. But when we come back, we'll get deeper into some of the issues that have been raised here. But also, what options do we have? You're also looking at the quality of leaders that are being offered at the elections and also the by-elections.
Yeah.
What do you make of it as a viewer when you hear them make their submissions, the very serious submissions they made, if you had them, on the policies they will bring, what they will do for you? What do you think? Stay tuned.